So Brian, then when software bug has an impact, then how do you address it? I mean, you don't include that as a story point, as you were saying. Is that how I'm understanding it?
Yeah, you can't point it because at the time that bug happens, your sprint has started and you've already pointed your stories. So you just resolve that bug, in that sprint to the best of whatever the time allowed it that it
Yeah.
takes.
If you can, you do it. Otherwise, you put it in the backlog for the upcoming sprint.
Yep. Or however the PO wants to prioritize it, because it might be you do have to resolve the bug, but yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, in our environment, we're not assigning story points because it gets so confusing, right? With this, we know that our next release is to deliver these 10 major functionalities. So we chunk those down, right, from what needs to happen from a development standpoint. And we align because we're in a hybrid environment, right? So let's say we have 10 things that we need to deliver, and the release date based on from just high level swag is like the June 28th date, right? We will try to figure out, okay, how much development, create development level user stories, assign those to developers, and then based on all the work that needs to happen before June 28th, right, which is our release date, we'll say, okay, this is development user stories, these are QA user stories, these are training user stories, these are the communication that needs to happen, this is things that we need to do for cybersecurity for this release, these are the technical documentations that need to happen. So we'll have a big backlog of the work that needs to happen to deliver that release successfully. And based on how much development work can happen, we're putting that into the upcoming sprints based on the work that we can accomplish. Things that aren't done in this particular release, we put into the backlog for the next release, and we continue to work towards that date, completing everything that the project team needs to do.
That makes more sense, logically. I'm a logical person, so yeah. So if I see things in terms of story point, that's sort of,
it's confusing. There's a lot of emphasis on story points, and what I want you to take away from this conversation is that some organizations use them to a T for development work. Some organizations use them to a T for development and QA work. Some organizations like us, we don't even use story points. We have things that we're tracking in Jira to identify all the work that needs to happen and get it, based on, how much needs to happen. So for example, let's say training, we know June 28th, we know the functionality we're developing. So we're going to have our training teams start to put together outlines of that functionality. So when things are in QA, they can take screenshots and start to finish the training materials, but they need to get started now, right? When I say communication, because we're a government agency and because the staff that these changes are impacting are part of the union, we need to give union notices 45 days before we release. So that needs to be now, right? So there's a lot of activities at the project level that, you can't estimate as story points, but are critical for us to get done.